right, we'll just give everyone a few minutes to join the public webinar. Trickling in slowly. I think we're getting to 107. Is that right, Shayla?
That is correct.
Okay. Got a ways to go. Maybe we'll give it like one more minute. Okay, we're kind of holding there. So we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. I'm Mary Farrell. I'm in the acting chair capacity for Housing and Stability Council today, and it is August 7th. Um, can we do roll call, Shayla?
Thank you, Chair Farrell. For the record, we are welcoming 3 additional new members to the council, 2 of which will be on the voting side today, and the other one voting starting in September. Chair Farrell,
Present.
Councilmember Culligan,
Present.
Councilmember Lee,
Here.
Councilmember Mena,
Here.
Councilmember McNamara,
Here.
Councilmember Rogers,
Here.
Councilmember Meehan,
Here.
and attending and observing today, Councilmember Standifer.
Here.
Thank you. And also for the record, I'd like to note that Councilmember DeFantorum and Willard have been excused from today's meeting. And we do have quorum, Chair.
Thank you, Shayla. And it sounds like we don't have any follow-up action items. So we will just jump right into report of the chair. And I'm going to keep my comments brief this morning because I really want to welcome our 3 new council members. I'm just going to introduce you. And then if you want to say a word about yourselves, that would be great. Certainly not obligated. So let's just start there. So we have Ed McNamara joining us today. Welcome, Ed.
Thank you. I think some of you know me. I've been developing affordable housing for many years. I started out as a contractor for a long time before I went to work for Reach Community Development in 1983, became the executive director. Later on, I worked for a private developer, the guy who bought the land that became the Pearl District in Portland. I worked for the Housing Authority for a little while on the redevelopment of Columbiaville into New Columbia. And then I went out on my own as a for-profit developer of affordable housing and did a couple large buildings that I owned and operated before well, there's a lot of other things in there, but I'm retired now and having a great time. And the most fun thing I'm doing next to this is working 1 day a week for Habitat building houses.
Nice. Well, we're excited to have you join us, and thanks for your service. Next, I'm going to introduce Carly Colgan. Would you like to say anything about yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Carly Colgan. I'm the CEO at Ben Redmond Habitat for Humanity.
where we partner with families to build and buy affordable homes here in Central Oregon. My role I've been in for a little more than 3 years, and the path that has gotten me here has taken me from direct service roles in construction and resident services to leading Habitat affiliates in Washington State and now here in Central Oregon. So super excited to be here and to learn alongside you all.
Well, welcome, and we're happy to have you. And our third new council member is Brooke Standifer.
Hi, I'm Brooke. I'm down here in Eugene. I'm a project manager and independent consultant working at the intersection of policy and implementation around housing production. My personal and professional mission is to advance housing and economic development in the Pacific Northwest. I'm very excited to serve.
Well, welcome to council. We're excited to have you as well. And so in the spirit of having 3 new council members, we also are having one of our longest term council members leave our council after this month. And so Mary Lee, we all just want to acknowledge your, is it 8 years of service now? That's amazing. Thank you for that. I just want to say how much I've enjoyed helping you on council. You are passionate, you are outspoken, you're focused, you stay true to your beliefs and your core values, and you never shy away from speaking your truth. And I just very much appreciate that about you. I'm going to miss that energy on council, and hopefully we'll still cross paths in some way. I've appreciated having you and your voice. And I just want to ask if any other council members want to join me, and just a quick shout out to Mary Lee and her amazing service. All right, Council Member Rogers.
Councilmember Lee, I also enjoy your passion that you've brought to the board. You've made me a more conscientious board member. I'm really also going to miss your energy. So thank you for your service. I know it's a lot with all that you do, but we'll truly miss you being on the board.
Council Member Mena.
Thank you. Mary Lee, you're an inspiration. And so I just want to thank you for teaching me a lot, and you will continue to do that. And, being consistent and pushing all of us to do what's right. And we're going to miss you, but it was great serving with you.
Council Member Meehan.
Councilmember Lee, I got to echo what my fellow council members have said, of course, but I also come from a place of not being directly involved in some of the higher level development and work. And so you've really educated me and given an opportunity for me to find my own confidence to speak about my truths, or what I feel was going on, relatable to the things that we talk about here. So I do appreciate your knowledge, your experience, your humor, and your passion. And thank you so much for being here. Look forward to working with you again soon.
Any other final words, or we'd welcome any comments from you, Mary Lee, as well? Nope. Well, that's going to be missed. We very much enjoy your comments over the years. All right. Well, I'm going to just make a last plug then before I hand this over to Director Bell. We are seeking feedback from our council on our statewide housing plan. There's been a couple emails that have gone out, and I just really know how busy everyone is, and it's summer. But if there's any way you can just give that some consideration and share with us your thoughts, we would love to have that as we move forward. All right, Director Bell, I will pass this over to you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, good morning, Mary Farrell. Good morning, members of the council. As always, it is so good to be in virtual community with everybody. I have several very flyby updates that are both central to housing, and then also just adjacent in recognizing how quickly the world around us is continuing to evolve and needing to keep our eyes on the ball on multiple things. Before doing that, I want to just note a couple things. I'm going to give a few updates. I'm going to hand it over to our government relations team to also take stock and of where we're at with building out the agency request budget. We are in the full throes of budget preparation and budget season ahead of the legislature convening in the 2027 session. So once I round out my updates, we'll go through that. First, let me just say, Mary Lee, what a journey, my friend, what a journey. It has been a gift in so many ways. I will say you have been, and I think this is a hard thing to do by nature, you have been like an espresso shot for 8 years on this council in the best way possible. I would say that alone is an enduring nature. And I will just say I came to the agency in 2019. I think most of you know I did not come in as appointee. I came in working in the middle and the guts of the agency, and over time have found ourselves in different places of our journey of public service, which has led me to where I'm at today. But there's a couple of very specific things that I want to uniquely appreciate that you have offered me and offered us that I think will be the enduring nature, not only just of this council, of this agency, and they're not specific to me or perhaps this version of us, because this version of us is going to always continue to evolve. These are not our seats. We don't occupy them forever. We serve, we hopefully make things better for people, and then we move on and make room for the next set of folks. But one of the things I have uniquely appreciated is your belief in what good government can do to make everyday life better for people. I think most of us know that we know the notion of people thinking of government, and you think of it as slow and kind of clunky, and probably a whole host of other adjectives that we could all exchange on. And maybe at its worst, it could be there. But I think you have always held a sense of the richest form of what bureaucracy can do when it is grounded in delivering for people, and what good government can mean and can do, not based in antiquity. And so I've always really, really appreciated that. I also think one of the things that has been uniquely important that you've brought in as a value place is the ability for critique and to have effective critique and the sky not fall, which means I think about all of the cacophony of vigorous policy debates where we've gone back and forth and we've settled on, like, we don't maybe agree on this piece of it and we agree where we're trying to go. And it has never been at the detriment of progress. And so that ability to both be in the weeds and have vigorous policy debate, and also know that we're not here to have an intellectual conversation, hear ourselves talk, we're here to get stuff done. And you're being able to coming back to the thing that sometimes gets lost in these like heady policy places, which is you need to get stuff done that's going to deliver for people at the end of the day. And you're being able to bring that on. I also think this has been central to the heart of how you have served, and I think areas where you've really helped guide and support the agency, and it continues to be important, is to make sure that we have a prism and a value set that as we are delivering for folks, we also know that government has also been handsy, perhaps in its past self, of not delivering for everybody and not seeing everybody in all communities in the vision of what reaping the fruits of what your government can deliver, and helping us define what that means, both from what it means to be of service and support to our rural communities, what it means to have an agenda that advances racial justice, not by doing less for somebody, everybody over here. And that continues to run through the hearts and the veins of so many people here, so many people on this body, but I also think the agency as well. So I'm immensely grateful for that. There's a lot of things I could say, but for now, I'll just say immense thanks and appreciation. I'm going to pivot now to some of the few technical things. I'm going to start with one in which that I think is getting a lot to be mesmerized by, which is the state of wildfires. I believe As of earlier this week, we had over 45 various wildfires, active wildfires across Oregon. As of the middle of the week, there were about 6 county and 3 tribal local emergency declarations, with Malheur County also declaring a state of emergency. The interagency, this work is led by the Office of Emergency Management. They have been at varying and increasing levels of activation and coordination based on the evolving nature of wildfires across Oregon. Currently, based on the response phase that it's in, OHCS is actively engaged but not deploying resources by way of response efforts yet. Generally, our work comes in depending on what the impact and damage is on the recovery phase. There is very much still just a containment phase in trying to make sure that folks are navigating through and that folks and communities are able to get to safety. So we will have ongoing updates both at these meetings and in between meetings as the matter evolves, so that this body is aware. I believe national preparedness level is at a level 5, which means that there's pretty heavily committed resources and emergency measures right now just to sustain incident operations, to keep folks energized and ongoing, to be able to help support folks across local communities. So a tremendous amount of heart and community response, and certainly devastation that is underway right now for all of us as Oregonians. So want to make sure that the board is, that you all are continuously aware of that. I'll have some more updates as we go along. The other update that I want to make sure that this body is aware of is pertaining to Medicaid. So I think each of you know that one of the more direct ways in which OHCS has interfaced with Medicaid and the health system, this is not the only way, but it's certainly one of the more prominent, is through our permanent supportive housing program led by Affordable Rental Housing Division. And really in the service deployment is where kind of one of our core areas of funding, relationship, and partnership deployment in terms of services bumps up with our colleagues over at Oregon Health Authority. I think most of us know that under the HR1 came some pretty broad policy shifts, some pretty broad overarching policy shifts. One of those that has been garnering a lot of attention really sits at the heart of Medicaid and SNAP. Specifically, I want to just make sure you all are aware that as of today, Oregon currently covers about 1.5 million people through Oregon Health Plan, which is Medicaid. And that includes more than half of all children in the state, and then also seniors who rely on Medicaid-funded nursing home supports. One of the areas of pretty major shift that is going to be pretty heavily of discussion and attention, I imagine, throughout the legislative session is around some of those new mandates, some of which create kind of new paperwork and new rules of the road in terms of work requirements. But the other part of that that is actively under discussion, which is there is an estimated of about 200,000 Oregon Health Plan members that could lose their health care. Now, these are active conversations, active work that's being underway, but I mentioned previously, and we'll continue to talk through this as we, get the most updated revenue forecast. But we've been having these ongoing conversations as we've been building our own budget, and we've been discussing this with you all around a cost-constrained environment in the budget that we're going towards. And that is true for a lot of dimensions. And one of the things that a lot of states, not just Oregon, are going to have to contend with and face is how you keep core services that people rely on every day, how you keep them up and running. And for those core services that had a natural financial dependency on the federal government, how you begin to fill those financial gaps. And when you can't fill those financial gaps, what does that mean? Now, that's a very broad simplification of it, but all to say, the folks that we serve, the people that we serve across the state, it will be important for us to understand our work, our budget, our investments, through understanding that a lot of the same households are experiencing a whole new dimension of potential burden, particularly for just working folks. So I want to just keep folks aware of that, both out of acknowledgement of things that are outside of our ability as a department to do, but where we're going to need to hold a broader prism of reality and impact, and how we can make sure that people could just afford to live and get by. So that's one thing. The last thing I wanted to mention really briefly, this is a little bit of a technical thing, but I'll maybe get to the point on why it's valuable, which is the Community Reinvestment Act and changes. So the OCC and the FDIC, they have proposed some major revisions to those community reinvestment regulations. We are just beginning to kind of tear through them and understand those regulations. But I think there's a couple of things that are emerging that we're going to be paying a lot of attention to. And one of it is that within those proposals, it seems that it would significantly decrease the number of banks subject to the CRA requirements. Some that apply to larger banks, including those on the financing side. The reason why that's so important is it puts affordable housing and community development investments and financing at risk, especially in those smaller markets. And so those are really sort of the guts of where a lot of those investments really respond to some of the localized community needs. And then the other piece of that is that it would impose new limitations to projects with no more than 15% spent on overhead. Now, I'm not going to get into all of the technical pieces, but I want to just use it as a precursor for a broader update I'm going to provide to council, but also for each of you as you're kind of going back in your day-to-day. We have the ability to provide a public comment, and I imagine that this will be one of the things that one of the areas of policy that we'll have a lot to say about that, particularly when the environment is shifting in such a way where some of those things that were here today and gone tomorrow have real broad implications when you add them all up. So the sum of those things together. So I wanted to just make sure that the council is aware of those things. So I'll have some more deeper updates in writing to kind of make sure that you all have that and can resource yourself and review that. And then also this will serve as the backdrop of some future updates that we will have, but also how it might influence or require us to have some broader considerations as we're thinking about our role as a housing agency, as a housing finance agency. So with that, I am going to yield, Mary Farrell, and briefly turn it over to our government relations team to go through where we're at on the agency request budget. Okay, Jill, you're up.
All right, thank you, Director Bell. Good morning, Chair Farrell and Housing Stability Council members. My name is Jill Gray. I'm the Government Relations Manager here at Oregon Housing and Community Services, and I have most of the Government Relations team here with me this morning. And thank you, Casey. We have some slides that we're going to go through with you. As Director Bell said, we are preparing a variety of things for the 2027 legislative session. Perhaps one of the biggest things that we're working on right now is our agency request budget, otherwise known as ARB. And we are going to go through some highlights from our ARB this morning with you. We have actually a lot of content to go with you today, so there's very little transition. We're just going to really jump into the next slide, Casey, if you can forward us to it. And one of the things that we've been talking about is we're going to talk about our agency request budget today, but that's really just one piece of a larger budgeting process that Oregon uses. We have limited time this morning, so we're really going to focus on ARB, but we've been talking about the government relations team. We'll come back at a later point to really go into a deeper dive on Oregon's budgeting process with Housing Stability Council members. So just know that for today, this is, you're really kind of jumping into the deep into the pool here with us, but that we will come back and do a lot more context setting about how this fits in with Oregon's larger budgeting process. But as we discussed, we're going to talk about the ARB, the agency request budget. And to back step a little bit here, Oregon budgets on a biennial basis. So Oregon's budgets last for 2 years, and a biennium starts on July 1st of odd numbered years and goes to June 30th of the next odd numbered year. So right now we are a little over halfway through our current biennium, and we are of course looking at what we're going to be asking for the next biennium, and the next biennium will start on July 1st of 2027. Part of Oregon's budgeting process requires all state agencies to produce an agency request budget. And that document is really what it sounds like. It is a document listing what your agency is requesting for policies and resources for the next biennium. All state agencies are required to submit an ARB to the governor's office and to the DAS CFO by the end of this month. And then they are published or publicly released on September 1st. So as you can imagine, we are in crunch time right now trying to complete our agency request budget. The next steps in the process are that the governor takes all of those agency request budgets. She pulls out the things from those ARBs that really align with her priorities and where she wants to go for the next biennium, and she produces the governor's recommended budget. That GRB is due to the legislature on December 1st. And then the legislature, their session starts in January and goes to June next year. They really use that GRB as the beginning point of their budget discussions next session. And then they have those budget discussions all session long until June is usually when we see them start making decisions about agency budgets. They start passing budgets for agencies and the legislative and judicial branches in June, and then all of those budgets together are Oregon's budget for the next 2 years. And then the new biennium starts on July 1st, and the process starts all over again. But as we've discussed, we are in the midst of the ARB right now. We need to produce an ARB and have it released by September 1st. And so we're going to move to the next slide because we have a lot of parameters that we need to work in order to produce that agency request budget. And Director Bell went over several of these items, but just to highlight them again, the agency request budget process no doubt feels different this year than it has for a few biennium now. I think in previous biennium, we asked a lot of our partners, what are the things that we should be asking for, and really helping to make those decisions about what are the requests that we should be making to the legislature for the next biennium. This time, as you can see in that first bullet point under different landscape this biennium, the state is looking at reduced general fund revenues and increased state costs. I think most people probably have seen the headlines about Oregon being impacted probably more than most other states over actions like tariffs and other federal actions, and that is expected to have quite a big impact on our state's general fund next biennium, and that there will be fewer general fund revenues as compared to previous biennium. And then the second part of that statement about increased state costs, Director Bell went through one of the reasons being all of the implementation requirements that several of our state agency partners have to implement HR 1 from Congress. So big agencies like DHS and OHA have a lot of requirements that they have to meet to implement, and those implementations come with costs. And so that there will be some increased state costs as well next biennium. All of that means there's a lot of pressure on our general fund this next biennium. And so direction that we received, as all of the state agencies received from the governor's office, was that we needed to focus on budget neutral ideas for the 2027 session. That is actually a very similar message to what we've been hearing from legislators. So if you go to the next part of that slide, cost neutral ideas, legislators have also said to state agencies that we really need to be focusing on cost neutral ideas. And legislators have told us they're really wanting us to think of new methods of housing finance and be innovative and look at different ways to finance housing while staying within our current budget. So in other words, they're really wanting us to try and be as creative as possible without asking for additional resources. I will point your attention to the bullet point under there about, as I said, they're looking for us to look at alternative funding methods outside of bonds and general fund. The governor's office has been much more flexible in our requests for bond resources. So when we get to the point of going through what are the requests we're making for next session, that we do have some requests. They are mainly bond requests. And the governor's office and legislators have been very clear that they want state agencies to be very cautious in making any general fund requests. So just to put a little caveat there that we have had a lot more flexibility in the bond requests we can make. All right, we'll move to the next slide. So one of the big parts of our agency request budget are the legislative concepts. So in other words, what are the policy ideas, the bills that we want to work on? Here we have the ideas we're working on. On the next slide, we're going to go over the funding requests. Funding requests are called policy option packages. So you may hear that term from a lot of people about POPs. POPs are really the funding requests, and legislative concepts, or LCs, are really the policy ideas. So on this slide, we're going to go over what are the policy ideas we're asking for in the 2027 session. I'm going to start with the homeownership policy ideas, and I'll just say that our colleague who covers homeownership division had a conflict for today, so I'll do my best to go over these, but just know if you have any questions, we will of course connect you with our colleague next week, and he can answer all of those questions in much more detail. But starting with directed loan delivery platform, and actually we'll take the first two there together, and short-term capital financing. Both of these ideas have to do with lending. So for directed loan delivery platform, it's really meaning that we want to direct our mortgage lending. At the moment, we use an intermediary or a middleman to access capital markets, and what we would like to do is really remove that intermediary and that the agency is doing that. There are other state housing finance agencies that do that, so Oregon would not be the only state doing that. Plus, it would reduce costs that we are paying to somebody else for that work, and instead we could reinvest those dollars and probably help even more homeowners with loans. Short-term capital financing has to do with, we have a servicer who helps us with our loans, and we have a cap with that servicer. So it's a dollar cap. We can only have the servicer help us with loans up to a certain amount. But there are times, and those times will depend on market conditions and other variables, where we have more loans than the cap allows. And what we would like to do is, what it says right there is some short-term capital financing that really allows us to go for a short time over the cap, so that those loans that are kind of this is a very inelegant way to describe it, they are kind of waiting in the queue, that they can be serviced immediately. The longer you wait to service those loans, the more costs there are. There are other entities that have this arrangement with their servicer. So again, Oregon would not be alone in this, but would be following what a lot of other entities do. So again, that was a quick description of those two. And if you have any questions, please let us know, because we would be really, really happy to connect you with our person who covers that area of the agency. The last one for homeownership division is we have a program in the homeownership division called the Manufactured and Marina Communities Resource Center. It provides services to manufactured and marina communities. One of those services being a dispute resolution service, so really trying to help homeowners and landlords with disputes so that those homeowners can stay in the homes that they have, and there's a lot more stability there. That particular program is a fee. The way that it is funded is through a fee, but that fee has not increased since 2019, yet the needs of that program have outgrown the fee that is collected. We're working with the governor's office currently to try and finalize what that fee increase would look like and how much of a fee increase. So there's more work happening and more information coming on that one, but we just wanted everybody to know that we are working on a MMCRC fee increase bill. All right, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Henry, who's going to talk about affordable rental housing ideas.
Good morning, Council. My name is Henry Taylor Bowlby, Government Relations Coordinator here at the agency, primarily supporting ARH and DRR. For this first one, for supportive housing, our current permanent supportive housing program is primarily targeted towards chronic homelessness, providing on-site behavioral support, peer support, tenancy support, rent assistance. This LC looks to, from some governor's office direction from Executive Order 2601, create 3 tiers of permanent supportive housing. The first being lighter touch supportive housing, which is meant to offer services and rent assistance to people that are below that chronically homeless definition. And then tier 2 would be the traditional permanent supportive housing funding that we're used to seeing with PSH. And then tier 3 would be intensive supportive housing that would be above the traditional need. For example, individuals exiting from institutions such as the state hospital. So people with high need that need more intense services than we've traditionally offered. For the OHTC one, a portion of our Oregon Affordable Housing Tax Credit goes unused each biennium. The goal there is to allow the agency to gift unused OHTC credits to CDFIs and housing-focused nonprofits who will then sell the credit to investors, and that money can then be used to fund specific developments or preservation activities in line with housing. This also sets up a dedicated account at the agency for called the Community Fund for CDFIs or housing-focused nonprofits that don't want to administer the funds directly. They can give them back to the agency. We put them in this fund and compare them with philanthropic investments or otherwise, and use those funds through our existing programmatic pathways. This last one for pre-development just looks to essentially add an eligible use to the Housing Development Guarantee Fund for pre-development. The Housing Development Guarantee Fund is what we use to support permanent loans in a guarantee fashion. Essentially, that just lowers the risk for lenders if we guarantee a portion of the funds should the development not come through. As we have stood up permanent lending programs here at the agency, we can offer those resources. And so as those commitments are being able to be made, the use for the guarantee fund winds down. We still have commitments there now, so transferring the funds out through a one-time use doesn't actually work. We've had that conversation with the legislative council as well, that's why we're not doing a fund transfer and instead adding a use. Those are the main things for ARH. Happy to answer questions, but I will pass it to Casey to talk about housing stabilization.
Thank you very much, Henry. Good morning, everyone. Casey Houlihan, he, him pronouns. I'm the legislative coordinator here that supports our housing stabilization division. We've got 2 core concepts that we're going to be pursuing for this upcoming legislative session. Both are relating to how we fund tribal housing programs. The first is relating to the Tribal Housing Grant Fund, formerly the BAFI-NATO, the Buy and For Initiative for the Native American Tribes of Oregon. Many of y'all are very likely familiar with that. In our agency budget bill, we received $10 million to fund those projects through that fund. One of the things that we've heard in terms of feedback from our tribal partners is that the timeline associated with the general fund account that they've been using for this program is not well aligned with many of their internal processes for deciding which projects to pursue. So one of the things that we are looking to fix is creating an other funds account for the Tribal Housing Grant Fund money to live in, which would free it up from the otherwise 2-year restriction that comes along with general fund dollars, which if it's not fully exhausted by the end of that 2-year period, it must be returned. This would allow tribes to pursue things along their own timeline. It would also give them more flexibility with which projects they choose. If they wanted to roll together multiple biennial worth of allotments to a larger project, they would be able to do that as well. But this is really designed to be responsive to the feedback that we've been receiving from our tribal partners. There's also a component to this concept we're pursuing to provide more flexibility in the populations that folks can serve, specifically by, there's a number of mechanisms that we're currently pursuing, but ideally allowing us to work with tribes directly on figuring out what would work best for them to be able to allow them to pursue those projects accordingly. So that's our first concept. The second is actually living within the agency-wide technical fix bill, which y'all will see it listed down there below in the bottom bullet point as well. But for this concept, we are working on correcting some elements of the statewide shelter program, which was passed last long session, House Bill 3644. There was a component of that where we created the regional coordinator model for administering the statewide shelter program. In the very waning days of session, it was brought to our attention that the definition of regional coordinator precluded tribal governments from being able to participate, which was not the intention of anybody within the agency or within the legislature that had been participating in the work group that had designed that bill. So what we have here is a technical fix, or more accurately, a few technical fixes that would correct for that. Firstly, it would adjust the definition in statute of regional coordinator to explicitly include tribal governments as organizations that can participate in that program. There were also some other wonky restrictions, such as geographic limitation on the areas with which a regional coordinator would be able to serve. I believe in statute it limited it to an area no smaller than the county, which of course would not work particularly well for a tribal government who's looking to serve the members of its own tribe. So it would also correct for that geographic restriction to allow tribes to serve folks within their community. Those are the two main concepts that we're pursuing for 2027. We'll hand things over to my colleague, JC.
Thanks, Casey. Chair Farrell, council members, Director Bell, thank you for letting us come in and talk to you today. I will be mentioning our agency-wide technical bill. My name is JC Davis, and I use she, her pronouns, and I am the administrative role coordinator here. So when I look at our agency-wide technical fix bill, there are really two major themes that we are seeing here. The first is really around government efficiency. So in 2013, the legislator had prescribed a list of requirements to support the oversight of the Housing Choice Voucher Program. And since 2022, we have not received a continued investment for this program. The structure of support for the Housing Choice Voucher Program included standing up an advisory committee and having a legislative report that was due to the legislator at the beginning of every long session. Now, there are no funds to be allocated, the council or the advisory council is no longer meeting. We would like to postpone these requirements of reporting until the legislator reinvests in the Housing Choice Voucher Program. Another effort around government efficiency is to support our human resources criminal background check process. Over the last couple of years, the FBI Office of General Counsel, Criminal Justice Information Law Unit, that is a mouthful, had reached out to our department as we have carved out authority to specify our criminal background checks within our administrative rules and in our statutes, which is ORS 456569. There were some updates that happened within public law. I believe it was 92544. And within that, there were some changes around what we were allowed to specify in our administrative rules around subject individual and the definition within. And also there were some compulsory areas within our criminal background checks that had been changed. Long story short, we're going to be moving some of our mays to shalls to better support the federal guidance here. The other listed items here are really about strengthening transparency, and these will be to understand and better define some terms for us. My colleague Casey just mentioned and went into a great amount of detail about our statewide housing plan and the technical fix to include our tribal neighbors within our regional solutions definition and statute, so I won't really mention that one too much here. But I would like to go to the affordable housing tax credit. The legislator has expanded the scope around preservation activities, and that was in last year's bill, House Bill 2087. And even though right now we have some new various ways for flexibility, the statutory definition of preservation was not amended. So we are hoping for a statutory definition to include those flexibilities for the OHATC, or the Oregon Affordable Housing Tax Credit Program. Our Housing Choice Landlord Guarantee Program is also included in our agency-wide technical fix bill, but we are looking to define our terms in rule around rehousing initiatives. Back in 2023, House Bill 5019 allowed us to really look at the expanded flexibilities to better support Oregon's landlords within our Housing Choice Landlord Guarantee Program. So we're hoping to better define that rehousing initiative in our administrative rule process and look forward to engaging with those folks. The last thing that is also mentioned here in our agency-wide technical fix bill involves our Homeowners Assistance Program. Back in 2021, we received authority to define veteran as a department. And our department has an expanded version of the definition of veteran versus our state's definition within ORS 408225. OHCS's veterans definition acknowledges the efforts that a service member may have provided to engage within the federal VA and has then received the federal benefits. So we're saying if you have engaged within the national VA department and they have bestowed you VA benefits, that we will also acknowledge that VA status for you. We also have some additional flexibilities that were provided within Senate Bill 79 within the 2021 session. That allowed our HOPE program here to also be extended to serve not just our veterans here in Oregon, but veteran survivors and family members. So we are hoping to carve out the authority to define veteran family member so that we can be inclusive of our expanded veterans definition here as well. So pending any questions, this is a quick overview of our agency's technical fix bill, but I'll turn it back over to Jill.
Thanks, JC. And Casey, let's move on to our next slide. And I know we are coming up to the end of our time, so we're going to go quickly over the slide, and Henry and I are going to cover it. So again, we're going to start with homeownership division. I'm going to just go over these very, very quickly. The very first bullet point there is probably one of the very few budget neutral ideas that we have in our ARB. We have a program here in homeownership division that is a manufactured home replacement program. It does really great work replacing manufactured homes with new energy efficient homes that meet current energy efficiency standards. That program is a general fund funded program. And since, as we discussed, there are all sorts of pressures on the general fund next session, one of the requests we have is we have unspent funds in the ECHO fund. And I honestly can't remember what ECHO stands for, but the fund is really for energy efficiency, weatherization, those types of activities, and could be used for replacing manufactured homes. We are asking for a transfer of funds from the ECHO fund to the manufactured home replacement program so that the manufactured home replacement program can continue. I'm going to go over these next two really quickly. We have a development program, LIFT, Local Innovation Fast Track. I'm going to let Henry talk to you a little bit more about it. For purposes of homeownership, I just wanted everybody to know that there is a homeownership side to LIFT, and we're asking for $150 million in bond funding for homeownership. The last one about the preservation and manufactured home communities, we received some funding in the 26th session for preservation and manufactured home communities. We are still in discussions with the governor's office about what and how much that we would like to ask for in this next session to continue that preservation and manufactured home communities. I'm taking these kind of out of order, but moving over to Housing Stabilization Division, there are no POPs, no revenue neutral POPs that we're working on for Housing Stabilization Division. However, there are many programs that are working with the governor's office, and you can see them listed there. Eviction prevention, rehousing shelter, long-term rental assistance, that we're working with the governor's office on what to do regarding funding for those programs, since many of those programs receive a lot of general fund dollars. So more information coming soon. Henry, I'm going to turn it over to you to go very quickly over affordable rental housing and disaster recovery and resilience.
Before we do that, I want to just take a quick break just to sort of, Chair Farrell, want to just sort of check in with you, check in with council. This is a lot of information. Obviously, we still have a few weeks out, and so I want to just maybe just take stock for a moment to see if there's any process curiosities, reflections, questions, or needs coming up as we work to go through the last sort of phase of ARB development going into September.
Yeah, it sounds like we have a comment from Councilor Meehan.
And I'll make it brief. Thank you, Chair Farrell and Director Bell. I just wanted to say that yes, there is definitely some. I would love to dig a little deeper. This is very much into the policy part of and talking to legislators and whatnot. So, I'd like to maybe ask to spend a little time outside of this space to dig a little deeper and on some of these affordable rental housing and housing stabilization division ideas or what we're doing for this session. Thank you so much for the update.
Perfect. Would be happy to. And maybe I'll just offer, Jill, if we can follow up with Council Member Meehan and in doing so, Aaron, you just let us know which topical areas or whether you just have questions you want to dive into, and we can make some time outside of the meeting.
Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Acting Chair Farrell. I've just got a couple of questions or comments. I appreciate the detail in which we're getting this information and appreciate you, Director Bell. There's no way we can actually process that information in this point. I think a couple of things I would like to see, and I know we're sort of, things are kind of getting figured out on the fly. I would like to see a really direct understanding of how these policy option packages and the ARB reflect directly back to the statewide housing plan. So we've got a draft statewide housing plan. I know there was a reference here and there in the presentation, and there are a lot of potential goals and strategies there. And I would love to see the crosswalk. Well, I'd love for you all to see the crosswalk between those statewide housing plan aspirations and this concrete reflection of what that would mean. I think there is a tremendous opportunity, even in a cut budget scenario, which is how we cut in different ways. So rather than saying we're going to take a little over here or this, program, everyone's got to take a 8%, whatever, doing more strategic cuts that actually reform some of our programs and some of our approaches is one of the opportunities when we're in a budget deficit situation. And I just want to urge us to be very, very bold about that. And again, Jill, you covered a couple things where we're going to try to innovate a little bit, right? The ECHO funds. These all are important things, and they're all really around the margins. When we're in this kind of situation, I think it's incumbent upon us to, push. Doesn't mean we'll go as far as we need to, but I think we need to push. And then the last thing I would say is I appreciate the talking to many different stakeholders and getting the direction from the legislature and getting the direction from the governor. I'm not sure the council has given any direction on this package and the approach. And of course, we shouldn't be in the line items, but we should be giving direction on package, approach, philosophic attention, whatever it is. And I'm just curious about how that's going to happen, and, given the timeline that we just heard. So none of that needs to be answered. I'm just taking the opportunity to raise it and try to bring some awareness to it. I think, we have for a long time not been as engaged in the budget process as maybe we should have been. And this is now another opportunity. You got 3 new folks with 3 new energies to be able to try to get at some of that. So thanks.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, Councilmember Lee. I'll maybe just offer a couple of reflections, Chair Farrell, if I might, and won't couch them as answers. The first one is we can absolutely send, and we'll put that on us to, I think, distill in writing where we see this agency request budget, aside from cost constraints, because we've been in cost constrained environments before, and so we know how to operate in that before. But where this proposed agency request budget is consistent with our ambition laid out with the next, even though it's not final, our next strategic plan, because I think that is part of the heart of the work right now, which is how do you maintain an ambitious agenda that you can deliver and also do so with reflection that we're not leaning on what we are accustomed to leaning on, which is big new pops with big dollars associated with them. So we can take that on to distill that for you, specifically, as you mentioned, as a crosswalk, so that the council has that and can see that. And that doesn't feel like a hunting game where you have to put that together. So I can take that on, we can take that on and provide that. In terms of the latter point around council engagement, I would say that this is you all, I'm sure I'm a little bit of a broken record here, but I am needing it. I think I am needing it. The floor has been there. It's there. I think the council has the initial sort of framework, kind of skeleton ideas. I'm sure folks are still marinating and thinking of all those things. And the floor is yours and it is continuously yours. So if and when there's perspective feedback conversation, you give it. Our job is to be accountable and responsive to it. If you can meet us there and give us thoughts, perspectives, and there's still time. So I would just say that the window isn't closed or closing necessarily, but would love to be able to hear perspectives and thoughts. The second, and again, I won't couch this as an answer, is you might recall that several months back, we were asked by the legislature to actually go through the exercise, Councilmember Lee, that you're referencing, which is what would it look like to do 5% cuts? And so agencies had to go through this exercise to go, okay, what would cuts look like? At this point, we haven't received a question to respond to in terms of where are you going to cut yet. But I think we do need to be prepared to do that level of work together and how we maintain fidelity to values and operations and do that. Hard decisions are going to be in front of us. I'll just say that. Like, I'll just be blunt and direct and consistent. We've got some hard decisions. I think we as a state of Oregon, have some decisions, hard decisions in front of us. What I would also say in terms of the budget neutral ideas and the ways to sort of garner innovation, and I don't think this is shocking, a lot of those ideas certainly are garnered internally and come from the bright staff and folks that we have internal to the agency. One of the things that we're trying on, and we are trying it on, and it will be interesting to see if and what we get, is we have a survey, and this is not the only area where we're trying things on, but we have a survey out right now that is intended to serve as a public call for feedback around regulatory reform ideas, meaning where is there unnecessary, excessive, elaborate bureaucracy, and where have we just frankly have accumulated a bunch of policies and rules that maybe were built out of good intent, but frankly in antiquity and in a different time. And I think we got some areas of that. And so there's a lot of work that's happening across the agency that unprecipitated by that survey that has already been happened. But I think part of the trying on is what does it look like to scale that more broadly? We don't want to get a real of certainly of policy and regulation that looks out for folks. But certainly if it hinders our ability to deliver and deliver well, then we should take stock of that. So there's a couple homework assignments for me in there, which I'm accountable to and will get out to folks. And we look forward to any and all feedback, perspective, and pushback too, if that's part of your perspective.
I have just a quick question, and this may be more of a rhetorical question, but how does the ARB overlap or inform, or vice versa, the statewide housing plan?
Yeah, so the strategic plan is intended to be a 3 to 5 year outlook, laying out the trajectory as to the conditions that we're trying to create in Oregon from a housing perspective. And then coupled with that, it lays out our course of action, the course of action that we're going to take to get there as an agency. So which means the product should include a vision and mission for where we're trying to go and what the future state for housing should look like. And then what is the course of action that we are accountable to in terms of how we're going to deliver and get there? And what are all of the different dependencies that are needed? The agency request budget, which reflects a 2-year time frame, is a pretty sizable 2-year time frame of either a 3 or 5 year plan. So that agency request budget reflects a body of work that is intended to be a push and a nudge, directionally consistent with where we're going with the strategic plan. So I think, Mary Farrell, I won't put this as a words in your mouth, but I think it sounds somewhat, the curiosity sounds something akin to what Councilmember Lee was mentioning, which is it may be useful for the council, particularly as we're in an evolving composition, to see where we're seeing those areas of crosswalk and frankly change, because we're not just plopping things in and going. I think there's a whole host of things that we are changing and trying on as an agency to make sure that we can continue to deliver in spite of all the things happening. there's a lot of things happening in the federal government. We get that. And frankly, there's a lot of things within our control, and we plan on using any and all of those tools to be able to move things forward. So if there's additional feedback as we're doing that homework assignment and delivery to the council, let us know. But that's a flyby as to how I see at least a high level view of the partnership and consistency between the agency request budget and our future strategic plan.
Any other comments or questions by council? All right, and just a quick check on agenda. We are...
So I think we're just rounding out with ARB. So Jill, what I would say is we can send out these updated slides along with the homework assignment. I don't think we need to rush through the presentation here unless there's final words before we move on. I want to make sure we can hear from you.
No, that's fine. This is really the last slide with content, so we have come to the end. The only other thing that I would tell Housing Stability Council members, and we'll get a link in the chat here, is there's more information about LCs and POPs, as well as we had some engagement opportunities with external partners in June, and there's some more information about those engagement sessions on our website. So we'll drop in the link for the resources and more information regarding our ARB in the chat for Housing Stability Council members. And then just know that, yes, this is a lot of content. And that was also one of the reasons that we'll come back and do a little bit deeper dive into what is the process and what does this all mean and how does it fit into the process. So you will hear more from us. This was really quite a deep dive at the very beginning, but there will be more from us so that we're all prepared for when the 2027 session starts.
Perfect. And then we'll also get some time, council member Meehan, and frankly, any other council members that want to just have some kind of more raw, unstructured conversation, let us know.
Yes.
We're happy to do that.
Yes, and I would offer that to any of the council members. If there's something of particular interest, please let us know, because we're very, very happy to go into more detail about those items that are of particular interest to you.
Thanks, Jill. Thanks, team.
Thank you, Jill. Are we ready to move into the Affordable Rental Housing Division portion of our agenda, Director Bell?
We are.
Okay, were you done with your report of the director?
Oh, I'm done. Yes.
Perfect. Absolutely. Okay. Great. I will hand this over to Natasha Detweiler-Davy.
Thank you, Interim Chair Farrell and Housing Stability Council. Welcome new members. Natasha Detweiler-Davy, Director of our Affordable Rental Housing Division. And we have a couple transactions to put forward today. And so I think the first step will be opening for public comment.
All right, thank you for that.
Hearing. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and open public hearing comments in accordance to ORS 456.561. Shayla, do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
Thank you, Chair Farrell. We have no one that has signed up indicating they do have public testimony. So if you have not signed up and you do, please use the raise hand function now.
All right, I'm not seeing any. Going once, going twice. All right, if there's no public comments, then we'll go ahead and... Do we need to close public comments?
Yes, formally
thank you.
Yes, formally close this public hearing.
Sorry,
and we'll move on to the transactions.
Thank you. We'll move on to transactions. Ty, would you like to take it from here?
Yeah, sure. I will, I think, start my screen share. So I think we've closed public comment, but the hearing is open for these approvals or recommendations. And I am, let's see, orienting myself. We have this first set of recommendations, and I think we'll begin to onboarding the new members, be able to have a little more iteration of where we are in these processes. The first transactions that we are bringing here are part of our 4% low-income housing tax credit and bond issuance recommendations. And so these projects that are brought from the production seat, which is stewarded in presentations from Ty, who will introduce himself in a moment, are the last bond approval. So they have come earlier for the approval of the subsidy side, and this is the secondary and final approval after final diligence. And this is all done now through our ORCA process, which is a centralized application system, but really a process for having a single point of entry for applicants for a wide range of resources, and then included accountability on the production of pacing. And so how much time is feasible for the different phases of underwriting and cost and diligence to ensure that there is a equivalency of process and moving projects forward. And I think with that, I will hand it off to Ty to introduce the Garfield Commons project. I will share screens. Go for it, Ty.
Good morning, Acting Chair Farrell, members of the council, Director Bell. For the record, Ty Dunson, AD production, and I wanted to just acknowledge acting member Chair Mary Lee. Just wanted to thank you for your appreciation of serve. We always appreciate your comments and your yes and spirit. And as a coffee connoisseur, I will admit, yes, the reference around espresso flight, espresso shot is very much appropriate. I would just elevate it to the espresso flight, a whole host of different types of espresso. So thank you again, and I'm sure you won't be a stranger to us. We'll and transition into the project. So we're here at this moment to present Garfield Commons. Next slide. Sponsored by Self Enhancement Inc. and their consultant Eaglin and Company is assisting on this project. It's a 59 unit building in Portland. The project was a previous awarded LIFT funds, and now we're back seeking approval on 4% tax credits at PAB, as well as the we call them OHTCs for short, but the acronym stands for the Affordable Rental Housing Tax Credit Program. That program is used to buy down rents for households in the building. So the project includes a range of unit sizes and total construction cost of over $35 million. $35 million includes conduit bonds of close to $20 million, and a previously approved lift award of close to $11 million. The next slide. And Self Enhancement Inc. Has been a longstanding partner in development as providing services, and this is and they have well-established plans to service the community. They have partnerships with selected with their property manager. We'll be coordinating with the Eritrean Resource Center, Latino Network, ERCO, and provide a range of services to the community. Their SCI and their general contractor Colas knows what's expected around their MWSB participation, and we'll be monitoring their progress closely. With that, I open up for any questions you folks may have.
Any questions or comments from council? Yes. Ed, Councilmember Ed.
Uh, Thank you, Chair Farrell. Ty, I was just curious, the bond amount looks like it's sized to meet a 50% test, but I thought the rules had changed that we all need a 25% test. Am I wrong about that? And if I'm not, why are we issuing so much bond for this one?
Yeah, the new rule is correct, but since the project was it came in at an earlier stage in the application process before the rule took effect. The underwriting was based that was based on before it kind of predates predates the rule in effect, and that's primarily the reason. And when they went to kind of the financial partners, when they went to sort of look at what it would take, adding in less tax exempt debt to meet the 50% test. This is the structure that was agreed upon when they took a second.
Yeah, I think the other piece of it, I think from that policy seat, which is Ty is describing the impact to this project, when the change from 50%, and I think for council broadly, to generate the 4% low income housing tax credit to, support the equity investment into the project, the federal standard had been you needed to finance at least half of your project with private activity bond authority, which is limited and able to support lower interest rate debt for the project. And so that federal standard changed from 50% to 25%. And OHCS has adopted a policy of a minimum of 30%. So some cushion there. So as costs shift and change through the construction process, you have some buffer to make sure that you can meet your required calculus on those bonds to be able to have sufficient equity supported through the tax credits. And in our adoption of that policy, we were giving projects already in the pipeline, choice to lower if they could have it supported with lower, and then also ability to retain that those higher uses where it is fundamentally part of the financing to allow the subsidy to not need to increase.
Great, thanks.
All right, Councilmember Rogers.
Thank you, Acting Chair Farrell. So I just had some questions about the unit sizes. And so just in the summary, it initially, for the number of rent assistant units, talked about there being 16 efficiencies. And then in the project details, it referred to them as studios. It's my understanding that there is a difference in size between a efficiency and a studio, and I'm just wondering which type of sizes are in this project. And for my own education, can you tell me what the difference in the square footage is between them?
Yes, so that's so these will be these will be that's a good kit. So I'm checking with that. So those are all studio units versus efficiencies, and that just nomenclature. There is a difference, but the studio the studio size, that have to pull up the our architecture manual, but I think
oh, don't worry about it. I'm just happy.
540.
Oh, okay.
But we will confirm that. We will confirm that shortly. Well, with making sure we get you the right square footage.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I do think, Councilmember, that those terms are often used interchangeably, but I think there's a distinction in the size and like the a technical definition is likely attributed to how the kitchen is, whether it is kind of a reduced footprint kitchen or a full kitchen, and
Okay.
it is no bedroom, but there's a shared space. So I think we can get better nuance to that, and also follow up with some additional insight on what this is, and then how we have that laid out in any of our requirements around it.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Standifer.
Thank you, Acting Chair Farrell. Thanks, Ty and Natasha. I'm having trouble doing some simple math in my head. I was trying to put the cap stack together, looking at the sources that I have in front of me, and I'm finding like a small gap. I was just wondering, then this could be a thing that you send later, but I was wondering if you could run through the cap stack and any deferred developer fees, or just something I might be missing.
Yeah. So deferred, let's pull it up. So deferred fee. So there's a there's a rainbow of sources. I will say that. So we have Lyft, we have a Metro TOD grant, we have a PCEF grant, we have a permanent loan, contributed fee, a earned earned reinvestment interest that will also be included, solar credits, and SDC waiver credits are also included. And I guess for future, we're happy to we have all this information kind of at the ready. So presentation wise, we're happy to get you folks more granular information in future meetings. It's we have it ready for you. So happy to chat with any folks further about what level of detail you'd like to see.
Councilmember Standifer, were you looking for the naming convention of the funding source or the dollar amount of the funding?
The dollar amount, but I'm wondering, maybe it's I don't know if you can send stuff after, but like, I think I'm probably more visual. Like, I appreciate you like naming them, and it is helpful, but I was just curious, like trying to think about the whole picture with the dollar amounts. Thank you, Andrea.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think I think Director Bell was referring to, needing to look at how we are have kind of curated the Housing Stability Council materials based on the interest. And I think that we have can be adding and enhancing the layers and details of the financing stack and be able to include all of that. I think so. We'll plan to start iterating that with Housing Stability Council, and I think as we bring projects next month, we will do that. And I think we can follow up in between after this meeting with some of that detail and on these projects as a way of getting some feedback on making sure that we're understanding the information interests from Housing Stability Council, and to evolve it to be responsive to the group's needs.
Does that work, Councilmember Standifer? Because I think part of what you and I think fellow Councilmember McNamara was bringing up was maybe some areas of evolution in how we present the content, so that we can kind of keep updating that based on the composition today. And then in the short term, we'll follow up with you and send you both a summary specific for this project, both the dollar amounts and the naming convention of those resources. Does that sound like that's meeting your need?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Right. Any other questions or comments from council? Okay, I believe we have a decision. So are we at the stage of taking a motion? Thank you, Councilmember Lee. Can we get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Rogers. Shayla, I'm going to take roll.
Thank you. Chair Farrell,
Yes.
Councilmember Culligan,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes. Yes.
Councilmember Mena,
Yes. Yes.
Councilmember McNamara. I knew I was going to do that. Sorry about that. McNamara.
Yeah. I'm abstaining.
Thank you. Councilmember Rogers
Yes.
and Councilmember Meehan.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
All right. That's great. Looks like we are moving on to the monthly ORCA update. Back to you, Natasha.
Yes, and so before we do the update, and actually maybe I will consider this our update and recommendation. I was referencing earlier our centralized application process, and so we have one project that is being recommended today through that ORCA process, and so from a difference and distinction from the prior transaction recommendation, so that is a project that had previously had subsidy approval recommendation through Housing Stability Council and came back for their bond issuance. This is a project that is coming for that upfront gap funding recommendation out of our ORCA process, and in specifically it's from our 9% program, and so I'll actually have our manager of our development resources team present this information as well. And I think for acknowledging the difference between normal meetings, this is often usually covered through Assistant Director Amy Cole, who is out on vacation along with Roberto Franco, Deputy Director of Production. They're not vacationing together, in case it sounded that way. I think they're different and distinct vacations. But I'm happy to have Brandy here to be able to introduce herself and share this presentation.
Yeah, my apologies to Natasha. I have the wrong glasses on, so I did not see that. We have another decision to make.
Absolutely, yes. And so I will defer to Brandy to present this information. I think our ORCA process is robust and working. Our resources are committed, and so really we have a long pipeline, a wait list of projects that are waiting resources, and the scale of those resource asks based on the pace of funding from the legislature to date will take years, biennia to move through, and so there's a significant amount of demand, and so our process focus here is retaining motion for those projects that we've been able to move forward, and then giving clarity that where there are and are not resources. And right now there is a significant ask for resources that we will not have for a long period of time. And after this presentation and project recommendation, I'll talk a little bit more about where we are with the updates and implementation that we had implemented last month. And so, Brandy, I will hand it to you and start screen sharing.
Thank you so much, Natasha. Good morning, Acting Chair Farrell, Housing Stability Council members, and Director Bell. I am Brandy Glasser, the Development Resource Manager. As Natasha said, I'm filling in for Amy Cole this month. So I am here to present this month's ORCA project for your consideration. Just as a screenshot of our current impact assessment stats. For the ORCA, we do have 19 projects in impact assessment under review, 48 projects in the impact assessment step, 29 are for-profit led projects, 32 are nonprofit led projects, 6 are housing authority led projects, and 0 are tribal led projects. Next slide, please. So today we have one project for your consideration, that is Gateway Apartments. Next slide, please. Gateway Apartments is a Chrisman development. It's 37 units based out of Cottage Grove in Lane County. They are asking for $2.7 million in preservation funds and $1,050,000 in 9% LIHTC with OHTC to attach to a permanent loan. Next slide, please. So the application states that Viridian Management implements procedures to accommodate individuals with limited English proficiency, and they use a professional interpretation service when needed. Site managers are trained to determine when language assistance services should be assessed, and interpretation support is offered to all tenants and applicants. Chrisman Development and Viridian Management recognize that social and economic justice issues have historically affected and continue to affect healthy and economic well-being prospects for many groups and individuals. They have developed a DEI policy for residential housing operations and for organizational operations, just for a few of their ERJ profile highlights. Next slide, please. If approved for funding today, the project will receive a letter of intent from OHCS and will move into our financial eligibility step of the ORCA process. Projects will have 6 months to complete the requirements of the step and move into the commitment step. In financial eligibility, a detailed development budget and pro forma will be closely analyzed by the production team to ensure that each project meets financial and underwriting standards, and to ensure that projects are leveraging debt and other resources that justify and support the state investment. The final award amount for each project will be arrived at through the underwriting process in the financial eligibility step. Next one, please. And happy to answer any questions. Appreciate your consideration of the motion. The motion is on page 14 of your packet. Thank you.
All right, any questions, comments from council? Councilmember Rogers.
Thank you, Acting Chair Farrell. So I'm excited about preservation and keeping units affordable. A couple questions. One, what do the relocation services look like for the current tenants, and do we have any information about the makeup of the tenants? So are they elderly or underserved in the community, or what's the makeup?
Probably should unmute myself. That might be helpful. Let me take a look and see. I know that they are serving low-income households, but let me see if I have some more details on it. Let's see here. So they offer 37 affordable housing units. Of these residents, there are 41 children, 57 adults that are over the age, or 57 adults, 5 that are over the age of 62, 4 that are listed as disabled. 78 residents identify as Caucasian and 12 identify as another minority. 8 did not want to disclose. Let's see, of those current households, 65% have an income below 30% of the average median income. Let's see here, trying to pull up the relocation plan. Bear with me, my computer is a little slow. So the proposed rehabilitation plan is based on a model that they have developed and used for other rehabilitation projects of similar size. It's anticipated the average length of time that tenants will need to be out of their units is 7 to 8 days for a standard unit, 15 to 16 days for an ADA unit. There's going to be relocation stipends for lodging and meals that will be provided to each tenant. Let's see. The staff has researched comparable lodging and provided a list to each tenant. This includes options for tenants situated in ADA units. Let's see here. There are 3 hotels within 2.5 miles of the city of Cottage Grove if the tenants opt to use the hotel versus family or friends. If they do opt to stay with family or friends, they're still going to receive lodging and food stipends.
So I think it overall is a rehab intended to have modest disruption to the families that are in the project. And so, if there's other curiosities or interests, let us know.
No, that's fine. For anywhere from 5 to 15 days, yes, it's modded. I was just thinking it may be longer than that, so thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? And if not, we can entertain a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Lee.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Rogers. Shayla, do you want to take roll call?
Thank you, Chair Farrell. Chair Farrell.
Yes.
Councilmember Colligan.
Yes.
Councilmember Lee.
Yes.
Councilmember Mena.
Yes.
Councilmember McNamara.
Well done. I'm abstaining.
Thank you. Councilmember Meehan. Councilmember Meehan.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, there we go. Thank you. Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for that. All right. Okay. I think that concludes the decisions for at least the Affordable Rental Housing Division section. Natasha, did you have any additional monthly ORCA updates that you haven't already covered that you wanted to speak to?
I think I will just be brief in my brief. So I think every month I include in the Housing Stability Council packet a narrative and data update of our ORCA and as a place to anchor where we are tracking and sharing information both with you and the public broadly around that, in addition to the our website and materials. Our centralized process is really a place to have projects come in and one application place to be able to have our applications move forward in a consistent manner. And I think the slide that I will just put this back on the screen here for you is like depicting the process through that. And so where projects are have an early concept, the development teams and related parties are able to be pre-qualified by OHCS. So there's clarity around where we would assess that there is sufficient expertise within the owner, operator, or otherwise to be able to meet our standards. So there's clarity about whether we would be able to consider them eligible for funding. Our then process starts for the applications on the intake, which is the early, here's the overall of our project. Impact assessment is our first deeper review on the policy of impact that those projects are including. I think the last month we did a update to our overall ORCA manual. I also, we brought forward, I guess in that monthly update, the projects that were selected for the 9% low-income housing tax credits. And that project you just endorsed is the first of the projects that are selected through that 9% process. Expect that we will see the a larger portion of those next month and probably wrapping up the following month. That selection process happens in advance of the full application of impact assessment. And so when they're coming here, it means that we have now seen and reviewed through against our established standards where in that impact assessment, so those projects will move into financial eligibility. Once they're approved here in Housing Stability Council. The wait list occurs after impact assessment when there are not resources available to fund them. And so I just will emphasize here that we do not have resources to meet the scale of our wait list. We have some resources, minor resources that, I guess minor in the scheme of the scale of resources, where we have nearly $1 billion in resource requests, and we do not have available LIFT funding to fund those. And even if the pace of legislative investments continues as it has been, it will take at least 2 biennia to get through the projects that we already have on the wait list. One of the fundamental policy updates that we all adopted and incorporated into this mid-year update in July was to establish a project size limit for those projects that could that we would consider funding without including tax credit leverage. And so the role of tax credit leverage is that it brings private equity to the financing stack. And I think we're excited to be able to add more of the details of the financing stack and that information to the packets for you. And the impact of that policy adoption is that there are a number of projects that had previously moved through this impact assessment process and have been on a wait list, asking and seeking for resources that did not include tax credit leverage that were above that 45 unit threshold that we have established. And in a place of honoring the wait list and our process, we are giving those projects 90 days to be able to evaluate and then provide all of the needed information we would have to allow, retain those projects on our wait list where they are already, but including now tax credit leverage to those. We expect that will be, based on that 90-day timeline, that will wrap up in around September, at which point we will have next steps for where is our pipeline, that wait list, really looking at the recasted. And I will acknowledge this is a significant impact to those projects that need to do the work to evaluate their ability to include tax credit leverage. It will also have impact to those projects that had been seeking tax credit resources and will now have a project that has done that conversion that is now above them in that wait list because they had submitted earlier initially. And so I think understanding that there's a lot of effort and there's also a lot of impact. And so we are actively talking and working to support the projects that are doing that work and trying to build understanding and be responsive to all of the concerns around impacts. And we will really not see that full story until October, when that process has had the ability to work itself through and overall acknowledge our system of our wait list is requesting far more resources than we have the reasonable likelihood to have in the next year or two. And so are wanting to be emphasizing that as a place and a point of clarity, knowing that each of these projects are both labors of love, but also financial investments for organizations that are supporting them. And so I think that is largely my update. I just want to acknowledge we have that 90-day time period is established, and projects are working that through, and happy to be able to talk about and dig into any of those areas either now, but also in the future as there's pieces of information or questions that you might have to inform where we bring other Housing Stability Council conversations into the future. So I think that's that'll constitute my update, and happy for any other questions or discussion.
Thank you, Natasha. Councilmember Rogers.
Thank you, Acting Chair Farrell. So, Natasha, I'm just wondering if there's a point, since we know that there are not enough resources for all of the ask, if there's a point in which we will no longer accept applications, or what that particular process looks like, to let potential projects know that we don't have the funding.
I think that is an active question that we are reconciling with now, and I don't know, Director Bell, if you have other sentiments to add to it. I think we are, I think the wait list has done in a far greater degree than was, seemed possible, to really compel an understanding about where the active projects are that could be funded and could be financed to meet community need. And when we started this application and process system, hadn't seen that visibly. Instead, we were having circles of the same projects applying time and again to the same competitive offerings. And so I think there's a streamlining here, and now this is allowing us to see that. And there is a place and a point where it feels critical to make clear that there really will not be resources to fund that full list, and it will be we'll need to kind of grapple with what is our responsibility, knowing that retaining projects on that list has and carries cost, and our impact is, as we were intending to and establishing our centralized process and system, was to focus our efforts on bringing projects to community and not on competing, and fostering spending more time on financing than we are on the processes around it. And so I think we probably will need to reflect on that as we think about what is the impact of a wait list within the system and how do we need to make those adjustments. I think I anticipate that is something that we'll be having more active conversations around through, over the next, several months, so that we are kind of understanding how to, implement such a limit into our systems in the next update.
Yeah, so no, thank you. Thank you for that. It's just, I think the orca has achieved what, it set out to do, as far as not to have the same people coming back. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I might just offer very quickly, Councilmember Farrell, I see Councilmember McNamar's hand up. Councilmember Rogers, I think that will be one of the functional areas that we need to be responsive to, and that we'll be bringing back to council. I think, as Natasha mentioned, and as the whole kind of gamut of our folks that have led and stewarded this really important work with advisement from our partners have led us to, which is resources are getting out the door quicker than they ever have, beyond what we hypothesized could. And so projects are getting access to resources quicker, more streamlined. They're moving forward in getting to construction close. I think one of the areas that is part of our work now, along with the sort of ongoing fine-tuning of the Oregon centralized application, is the resource waitlist serves a lot of different purposes, and we've talked about a lot of the values of that, in terms of making sure that the public and that the legislature can see that there are lots of able and capable projects across the state that are looking for funding and could be up and running if it were not for lack of resources. And I think we also have to wrestle with, at some point, it loses its luster when it is so lengthy. And we have asked folks to get your projects as close to readiness as possible, which takes money. And so if they're investing time and money and then getting on the wait list, to Natasha's point, and there are, along with so many other projects that are waiting, at some point, to be good stewards of the resources, but also responsive to our partners, also need to be able to say, if you're continuing to put projects on the wait list at this point, the likelihood of funding is so far down the road. And so where do we also just need to be responsive to our partners, so that we're not setting them up for just waiting into perpetuity, because time is literally money. And so I think that is what Natasha's speaking to. And I imagine some of the both conversations and work that we'll bring back to council, which is, what is the next iteration of the resource waitlist? So I'll yield. Councilmember Farrell, I imagine there might be other council members that have perspective and insights.
Okay, Councilmember McNamara, did you still have a question?
No, I'll pass.
Are you sure?
Mhm.
All right. Any other questions or comments from council? Member Mena.
Thank you, Chair Bill. Farrell. One of the things that the challenging component in this whole process is there are projects that are, from my understanding, just ready to go, but the funding. And with this lack of funding that we have, and completely understand the challenge that we have with the budget and the ask. I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity here to do an ask on specific projects that we know or we can verify that are ready to go, but the funding. Because delaying those projects for another year or two is going to provide another gap or bigger gaps that had we funded it now, we would not have to worry about. So I'm just asking if there's an opportunity like that, looking at however many few there are, 2, 3, 4, whatever is in that queue of projects that are really, really ready to go. And because, and that provides an opportunity for specific asks for this project, for this number of units to begin construction now, as opposed to 2 years from now.
Yeah, I appreciate that conversation. And I think it's a really critical one for us to continue to have. I think that there, from our ORCA and the standards process and our perspective adopted into the policies for readiness is really trying to balance that idea that there is inherent and substantial cost to being literally shovels in the ground ready. And so doing that work, especially exposed without a resource reservation to get in the shovels ready, you're putting a lot of resources in without an actual funding pathway understood. And so our perspective in our systems is to have, those projects and diligence demonstrated, the standards and understanding of our process when those different documents are required, including timeline parameters. And so if your process of permitting is 9 months and we would allow you 6 months to be able to get that finalized, they need to start before. You need to have those processes initiated. And there are some projects where they have perhaps gotten themselves, we have permits in hand and we can begin construction. And the challenge, I think, is that if we were to establish a policy wherein the projects we would fund are those with permits in hand and, the final architectural, all of those pieces that are, generally established right before the closing table, then a much larger portion of those projects on our wait list would have that hand. And so I think that there's a challenge of our approaches there from where do we need to hold resources to our processes and of standards and providing access and opportunity, and how do you build into that pathways for resource certainty for those in advance of a resource reservation, for those projects that are deciding and choosing to do that investment to get ready without having resources clear, knowing that our legislative allocations are not something that we have control nor can predict with confidence. And so I think there's that inherent tension to maybe we talk about as how do we balance that idea of fast with planful to be able to move our system and our put the pressure to organizations to incur such cost at risk.
Alrighty. Any other last comments, questions about this section, or we are ready to move on with our agenda? All right. Well, we're going to move into homeownership division with Talia Concrevis, Interim Director of Homeownership Division. Talia?
Hi. Good morning, Chair Farrell, Director Bell, and members of the Housing Stability Council. I'm Talia Concrevis, she, her pronouns, and I'm the Interim Director of Homeownership. And welcome new council members. And thank you to Councilmember Lee for your leadership over the years. We're excited to be here today to present the first two Lyft homeownership projects of this biennium coming for your approval. Lyft homeownership, I know many of you are familiar with it, but it's been around since 2018 and it's evolved significantly in attempt to keep up with our production needs. To date, OHCS has funded over 1,200 homes where over 3,000 Oregonians are rooted in community. These are all shared equity homes and they'll remain affordable in perpetuity. And the great part about that is that they have the backing and care of a long-term steward that works really hard to ensure the stability of residents and the health of the physical homes over generations. So Jessica will dive into the details in a moment of these two projects and a bit about our NOFA process. But I just wanted to note that you may be used to coming to you with many projects at once. We've shifted our NOFA a bit to a rolling biennial process, somewhat similar to the ORCA. So you'll be seeing us more over the next year, coming in small chunks with projects. Projects have a longer but more structured underwriting runway to get to approval. So we come as each one is ready to go. This month, the approvals happen to be coming from the same developer, Thistle and Nest, with two projects in different locations across the state. One of the projects is going on its fourth phase, and I just wanted to say I've had the opportunity to visit the Woodhaven project multiple times, and it's been amazing to watch a large empty swath of land transform into a vibrant neighborhood that will soon have 144 homes. And just a quick anecdote on a recent trip to Bend, by happenstance at dinner, a local bartender told our group that he had just bought a Woodhaven home before hearing of this opportunity, he had never thought homeownership was in the cards for him. So that's what we love to see, that people are able to reimagine their future through these opportunities. And with that, I'll pass it over to Jessica McKinnon to share more.
Actually, I'm going to just pause really quick. Sorry to interrupt, but I want to just make sure we're covering our bases. I see on the agenda another option for public hearing comments in accordance to ORS 456.561. So let's just take a minute to see if we have anybody signed up for that, or if you wish to speak on this particular agenda item, please raise your hand and we can hear your comments now. Right. Okay, it doesn't look like we have anyone, so I'll close public hearings comments and we can proceed. And thank you for that.
Great. Thank you so much. Just give me one moment to share my screen. Well, good morning, Chair Farrell, Director Bell, and members of the Housing Stability Council. Thank you for having us here today. I'm Jessica McKinnon. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Senior Homeownership Development Program Analyst for the Homeownership Division. Today, I am pleased to present our first two recommendations for the Homeownership Development Notice of Funding Availability. As a quick reminder and introduction for our new council members, we did make significant changes to the NOFA process this year to better support the program and our partners in an environment where funding is significantly oversubscribed. We moved to a biennial NOFA process that allows us more flexibility with our applications, and we adopted the new process shown here on this slide. Projects that we will recommend to you this biennium have completed almost all of these steps. They've completed an intake form to come into our process. They've been fully set up in our system. They completed the first phase of the application, which is their concept proposal. They were selected among all of the proposals we received to move forward into the due diligence stage, and they've successfully completed all of our due diligence tasks. Your approval will allow us to move to the final stage, which is providing the project a formal reservation of funding, a few final due diligence tasks, and starting the closing process. Among many other documents submitted, our concept proposal and due diligence includes threshold scoring in 6 categories. That's capacity, experience, stewardship, equity, and community engagement, project details, and financial viability and risk mitigation. We score each of these, and applicants must meet a separate minimum score for each of the categories. While most of the scoring criteria has stayed generally the same for the last few years, I did want to share how we're updating the classification and reporting of our equity thresholds this year. The application and our summaries are now broken into the categories listed on this slide. Among the many ways that equity can be considered, these stood out as the most relevant to our program and will allow us to advance equity thoughtfully within the practical responsibilities of a public agency. You'll see these terms both in your packet and in the later project slides. Our evaluation of organizational equity considers internal operations like policies, hiring practices, and accountability. We ask about the underserved populations in their community, who they are, what their needs are, how this project can address those needs, and how the applicant has built relations with those underserved communities. Our evaluation of procedural equity makes sure that community members are included in the design and decision-making process for the project, and ensuring that that includes pathways for underserved households to participate equitably. For distribution equity, we ensure that underserved communities will have equitable access to the opportunities created by the project. This includes equity in contracting, outreach to potential buyers with a focus on underserved communities, education, support, and other tools that empower home buyers before and after their home purchase. Finally, we also consider if the organization is a culturally specific organization or if there's a formal partnership with one. We also provide you with a few other indicators of the project's contribution to equity if it's relevant. Any project we recommend will at least meet standards, meaning that they've met our minimum required equity standards from that previous page. We'll also let you know if they scored significantly higher than our standard. That's at least 22 of 29 possible points. And if the applicant is a culturally specific organization. We're also looking at a few other indicators which are determined based on our reading of the project and application. The first is that we'll tag a project as foundational equity if the project has been clearly designed from the ground up to further equity, address injustice, or expand long denied access. Projects with this label will go beyond the inclusiveness listed in our equity standards. We'll indicate a project as geographic equity if it's in a county underserved by LIFT, and then we'll mark a project as anti-displacement if their project and equity descriptions show that their development will help keep people in gentrifying communities. Each time we'll come to you with recommendations this biennium, we'll provide you an update to this table summarizing everything happening with our NOFA to date. This table was also included in your packet, but I did want to highlight 2 of these rows. In addition to the 2 projects presented today, we have 13 other projects working through our due diligence process. These will be recommended to you over the remainder of this year as they finish their due diligence work. These will provide 223 homes, and by the end of this year, we hope to reserve over $55 million. We received 17 more concept proposals this year for 287 additional units. We actually received more applications this year than we'll have availability for the full biennium. These projects did not move forward to due diligence, but we will consider them again in September when we launch the final round of this biennium's funding. Our NOFA is still open, so any of these projects that have come through intake and other interested applicants can still submit a concept proposal and be considered for that final round in September. The first project for your consideration today is Makara Landing Phase 2 by Thistle and Nest. Makara Landing was approved last year, but we weren't able to fully fund the ask, so they've returned this year for the remainder of what they asked for last year, plus a few additional units. Makara Landing is a large project located in Lincoln City, which is one of our underserved counties. This phase will add 33 units to the site for a total of 40 units in this development at this stage. This request includes 5 2-bedroom homes and 28 3-bedroom homes. This phase is estimated to cost $15.5 million total, or an average of $470,000 per unit, and homes will sell for an average of about $270,000. 4 units will provide deeper affordability to households earning up to 60% AMI, and Thistle and Nest is requesting $6,765,000 in LIFT funds. Makara Landing will preserve features of a wooded site, including old-growth spruce, and homes will be built to Earth Advantage Platinum standards with solar panels included. 5 of the homes will be ADA accessible with universal design features, and Thistle and Nest will offer veteran-focused down payment assistance to potential buyers. Thistle and Nest meets all equity standards. This project also provides geographic equity, expanding LIFT's impact in underserved coastal Oregon. The organization has developed tangible equity-centered policies, including a DEI statement, procurement policy, and criminal record policy. Team members must also complete annual fair housing training. As part of their engagement, Thistle and Nest completed a survey of their homeowners to identify potential improvements to their work and designs. Through this, they identified a need for more accessible or adaptable features. The 2 projects proposed today represent the greatest number of accessible homes provided by Thistle and Nest, and their equity responses revolved around doing this well. They have engaged with disability-oriented organizations to identify the most important changes to make to their homes and to provide future outreach when the homes are ready for sale. Thistle and Nest's projects exceed our equity and contracting goals with a woman-led general contractor, specific outreach to smaller contractors, and support for Spanish-speaking contractors. For buyers, they engage a substantial local outreach network, including a formal partnership with the Latino Community Association. They also complete demographic and referral analysis to see who they're serving and make corrections if necessary. Our second project is the 4th phase of the Woodhaven Community Housing Project, also by Thistle and Nest. This project is located in Bend and will include 38 units, 5 of which will be affordable to households earning 60% AMI. This project features larger family-sized units, including 37 3-bedroom homes and 1 4-bedroom home. The total project cost is about $17.5 million, or roughly $460,000 per unit, and homes will sell for an average of $285,000. They're requesting $7,010,000 in LIFT. Woodhaven 4 is a scattered site development that'll expand on Thistle and Nest's work in Bend. One site is in the same area as the previous 3 Woodhaven phases, and the others will begin work elsewhere in the city. The development features modern design and energy-efficient homes that are net zero ready. 6 of the homes will be ADA accessible. Woodhaven Phase 1 is complete. Phase 2 has sold all homes and is working through our completion process, and Phase 3 has begun vertical construction, so this is a great time to get started on Phase 4. I've provided a summary of both projects on this slide and ask that you consider the motion to approve both projects for funding. I'm also happy to answer any questions for the council.
Thank you, Jessica. Do we have any questions or comments from council? Councilmember Colgan.
Thank you, Chair Farrell. Thank you, Talia and Jessica. I'm wondering if you could talk some about the redesign in the NOFA and specifically around how you're determining capacity for stewardship. I'm thinking about small and emerging organizations or organizations that don't have a huge staffing. What does that look like for determining their capacity to steward these homes for perpetuity?
Sure. Our new process, I guess the really quick summary is we have moved to a first come, first served process, but in practice, we receive the vast majority of our applications on the first day. So we have to look to a tiebreaker that has been public and transparent to be able to select which projects move forward. Those projects then go through a 3-stage due diligence process that goes beyond what our former application was. It includes our threshold scoring, our original preliminary review on things like site control, environmentals, making sure that all the due diligence has been done. and has gone into a little bit more of the due diligence that used to happen after Housing Stability Council approval. For stewardship, what we are looking for is essentially that the community land trust process has been substantially set up. We want to see that staff on the team have experience with community land trusts, that they have fully created their ground lease, that they have adopted best practices such as the computing equipment or a tracking and monitoring system, that they've established processes for monitoring compliance. And am I missing anything else, Talia?
Yeah, that was a great summary. I'll just add, as a first part of the application at concept proposal, we ask them for their experience in development and stewardship. And newer organizations can get around having decades of experience of stewardship if they're partnering with an experienced consultant or organization that is meaningfully helping them become stewards in the future, or they're contracting with them long-term for stewardship. So we're asking them those sorts of questions. We will probably be lengthening that part of our application in the future because we've seen over time that people are applying to LIFT, or organizations are applying for LIFT with the theoretical understanding that they're going to steward these homes for over 100 years, but not the practical understanding. So we'll be prompting for that understanding more, but it doesn't have to all be in-house.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Acting Chair Farrell. On the Makara project, I'm curious, I think I read this correctly, maybe I didn't. Neighbor Impact is not the local community action agency in Lincoln City. And same, I think, for the Latinx Community Association. So I'm just curious about why the connection, particularly as it relates, I think, almost Councilmember Colgan, the question about longevity and commitment over time, that we're out of community for this project and not in Lincoln City environs.
That may be a mistake on my part in confusing the two projects and which response went into which explanation of equity. I know they've done significant work in the Lincoln City area, reaching out to local organizations. If you'd like, I can open up their application and see if they have a different organization that I could name for you.
No need to do that. I just want to raise it as a question. And as you all are following up and continue to work with the project, I'm just curious, could they not find anyone in and around local Lincoln City to work with? Or is this a reflection of where they came from, Thistle and Nest, and their existing relationships? And then I'm curious about how that's going to transfer. I mean, I think we've had a lot of conversation over the years about sometimes resources aren't available, particularly in our rural areas, the same way we think about them in other places. And so this idea of sharing knowledge and information back and forth is a great one. However, when we think about racial justice and equity, that is really relationship built. And it's really about living in community with each other. And so I'm just curious about it. If it was a Scrivener's error, that's fine. Just wanted to raise it for our awareness. Thanks.
Thanks, Councilmember Lee. Councilmember Meehan.
Thank you, Chair Farrell, and thank you for the comments, fellow council members there. One of the areas that I have a tendency to be repetitive about is that follow through. Like, after we're done with stuff, after we're done with these projects, what's the feedback after a year, or how are things coming? Obviously, this is for now and not a year later, but just be mindful that some of the feedback needs to come back from what things we've completed and how people are doing, after the fact, because that seems to be where some of these projects started out with good intentions and ended up maybe not didn't consequences that they weren't looking to have, unintended consequences is what I'm trying to say. So thank you for your hard work. I appreciate it.
Any last questions from council? Okay, it looks like we do have a decision, so we can entertain a motion if there's no further discussion.
I'll second.
Can
So
we get
moved.
a... Did you catch that, Shayla?
I did.
Okay.
You me.
Thank you, council members. Chair Farrell,
Yes.
Councilmember Culligan,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Mena,
Yes.
Councilmember McNamara,
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers,
Yes.
and Councilmember Meehan.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, it looks like we are at a break. It is almost exactly on schedule, so it's 11:15, and I guess I'll defer to council. Do you feel like we need the full 15 minutes, or do you want to do a 10-minute quick break? Do we need to do the full 15?
I'm good with less.
All right, Director Bell, is that acceptable?
Yeah, I will defer to the council on if a break and for what length of time.
All right, let's just take a quick 10-minute break and we'll reconvene at 11:25. All right, it's 11:25. Thank you guys for accommodating a shortened break time. We can move right into our next section, but I just want to mention that both Councilmember Lee and Councilmember Meehan have both stepped off the call for the remainder of the day. All right, so with that, we can go into Housing Stabilization Division. Liz Weber, Director of Housing Stabilization Division. Liz, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Chair Farrell, Director Bell, and members of the council. My name is Liz Weber, and I'm the Director of the Housing Stabilization Division. I would also like to welcome the new members of the council and also extend our division's appreciation of Councilmember Lee, even though I know she had to step out. We really appreciated her engagement with our work, the encouragement to always dive deeper, and particularly her thought partnership and guidance around our youth-focused programs and her support of the Tribal Housing Grant Fund. We certainly appreciated her role in that. Today, we're presenting state plan updates for two of our federally funded programs, the Weatherization Assistance Program and Community Services Block Grant. We bring these to council each funding cycle for visibility and advisement. The plans don't require formal council approval, though we erroneously stated that in the original packet in the memo, and we did update and correct that. But your feedback is part of the application process. These state plan submissions are required to receive these federal fund sources. These two plans are due no later than early September, though the weatherization funding, there is an opportunity to receive expedited funding if the plan is submitted earlier. My colleagues presenting the plans today have included some background and history of the programs and some high-level service data for the weatherization program, recognizing that some folks on council likely have more familiarity with these programs than others. But for today's purposes and recognizing some of the time limitations, we're going to move fairly quickly through those sections and primarily focus on the plan development and the changes with this year's submissions. Some of the program elements change relatively little from year to year, but some, like the CSBG state plan goals or the weatherization training and technical assistance plans, are updated each funding cycle, and that's part of what we'll be discussing today. I also wanted to acknowledge at the outset that since our last state plan submissions, the federal environment has changed in ways that have led to both delayed federal guidance, to delays in us receiving federal guidance, and new guidance being issued. And that has required both nimbleness and careful consideration and assessment, both on our part and by our partners and our grantees. And one example of this, Leanne, our CSBG program coordinator, will share some information about a directive on DEI-related funding issued by Health and Human Services in July of last year. However, I do want to say that our programs continue to commit to advancing equity across our programs by identifying disparities and barriers in compliance with federal and state law. And our division continues to work to ensure that the federal funding due to Oregon comes to Oregon, and these state plan submissions are a critical part of that process. So I will first hand things to Steve Diven and Danielle Safford to walk us through the Weatherization Assistance Program state plan.
Thank you, Liz. Director Bell, Chair Farrell, and council members, good morning. My name's Steve Diven, as Liz said. I'm the Weatherization Unit Manager within the Energy Services section. And I'll be presenting today along with Danielle Safford, our Weatherization Program Coordinator, on the DOE 26 state plan. Normally, this plan comes before council in May, but delays in DOE guidance have pushed the grant timeline back. We'll be at least a quarter behind. Because of that, we're moving through this expedited state plan process to ensure Oregon receives a timely award once we submit it to DOE. As Liz said, the purpose for our presentation today is to receive guidance, input, or feedback from the council regarding the US DOE state plan for our weatherization grant. A record of your feedback in this discussion is required as part of our application for federal funding. And this presentation will also include a high-level overview of Oregon's weatherization program, which draws on multiple funding sources to deliver complete statewide weatherization services. Together, these resources allow us to serve households across Oregon with energy upgrades, health and safety improvements, and long-term energy efficiency measures. Next slide, please. Although DOE Weatherization Grant is a relatively small portion of our overall funding, its framework is essential. DOE sets the structure, standards, requirements that allow us to pair DOE dollars with state funds and other sources, so each project can go much further. By using DOE's rules as the foundation, we're able to braid multiple funding streams together in a way that lets each source cover different parts of the job. This ensures the grants complement one another and allows us to deliver a full suite of weatherization measures regardless of fuel type or location. So equity across the board as far as services. And DOE may be a smaller grant, but its framework is what makes the entire statewide weatherization effort work as one unified program. Next slide, please. Comprehensive weatherization does more than just improve homes. It strengthens communities. Through the program, the eligible households receive direct benefits, conservation measures, health and safety improvements, heating system repairs and replacements, and energy education on energy use. Beyond the home, though, these services ripple outwards. They support local economy by employing contractors, creating training opportunities, and investing in both energy and non-energy benefits that keep dollars circulating locally. Finally, the program prioritizes highly vulnerable population. It includes individuals with disabilities, elderly residents, families with children, and homes facing high energy burden and high energy usage as required under DOE statute. Next slide, please. These are the most common weatherization measures we use to make homes safer and more efficient, more comfortable. We start with heating and cooling systems, cleaning, tuning, repairing, replacing equipment as needed, and insulating and sealing air ducts to prevent heat loss. Next, we focus on insulation, adding it to ceilings, walls, floors, sealing air leaks to keep the conditioned air inside. We also upgrade efficiency by installing low-flow shower heads, LED lighting, and replacing select appliances. Ventilation and safety are part of the process too, installing fans, smoke detectors, carbon monoxide alarms, and finally, make sure the households understand how to maintain these improvements through education and demonstrations. Next slide, please. This slide highlights the reach and impact of Oregon's Weatherization Assistance Program over the past program year. Between July 2025 and June 2026, the program served 1,141 households, 784 being homeowners, and 357 being renters. These investments touched a wide range of housing types: 445 single-family homes, 381 manufactured or mobile homes, and 46 small multiplexes, and 269 apartments. This mix shows how weatherization benefits across Oregon's housing landscape, from single-family homes to urban apartment buildings, helping families lower energy costs and improve comfort no matter where they live. And while this summary reflects only a portion of the program's outcomes, it demonstrates a clear progress and momentum. Next slide, please. Since July 1st, 2025, the Weatherization Assistance Program has made strong progress statewide. We've weatherized more than 1,100 homes, saving households an average of $372 on energy costs per year. In addition, 50 roofs were replaced to ensure proper insulation could be installed and safely and effectively, and also protect it for the 30-year measure life for that measure. Although altogether over $23 million in WAP funds were distributed to community action agencies to support this work. For the weatherization program, the U.S. DOE has identified specific priority populations, and we work with the CAAs to ensure that they are reaching these populations. The data shown here provides a breakdown of the services by the DOE populations. As with all programs administered by Housing Stabilization Division, we also work with our CAAs to ensure that within the U.S. DOE priority populations, there's equitable access to the benefits of the program. In addition to tracking the demographics who is served, including the race and ethnic demographics shown here, we require CAAs to develop marketing and outreach plans that are tailored to the communities experiencing poverty in their regions, and to identify strategies that they will use to remove barriers to access those communities. These plans also include language access strategies. Spanish in particular is the preferred language of a significant percentage of people served by the program. So OHCS and the CAAs prioritize hiring people with Spanish language skills and ensuring that all program information is readily available in Spanish. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Danielle Safford, our Weatherization Program Manager, and she'll walk you through the changes in the plan this year. And then we can take questions once she's finished. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you to the Council for this opportunity to share our work plan for 2026. I'm Danielle Safford, the Weatherization Program Coordinator at OHCS. I'm going to talk through the changes and updates that were made this year, as well as why they were made. So first off, the percentage of funding reserved for health and safety measures per job has increased from 15% to 20%. This was a federal requirement. Health and safety dollars can pay for things like unsafe combustion appliances, plumbing leaks, electrical hazards, lead-based paint, asbestos testing, mold and moisture issues, and smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. More funding strengthens the program's ability to address hazards and ensures the homes that we work on are safe when we're done. Next is renewable energy systems are no longer eligible for WAP funding. This was a federal requirement that came to us, this change. Beginning in 2026, any renewable electricity generation technologies will no longer be considered for approval when incorporated into the state work plan. DOE's decision was to allow us to maximize our investment in the longstanding WAP proven measures like air sealing, insulation, and heating and cooling efficiency upgrades. Unapproved National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA activities are unallowable and must be repaid. DOE required us to incorporate some language into our work plan this year, and it essentially says that if activities are performed outside of our programmatic agreement and we do not have pre-approval from DOE for these activities, that the funds will need to be repaid. Completed jobs must be entered into OPUS within 30 days. Our OHCS weatherization team is including this language on reporting to obtain more current and accurate data for reporting needs and to better desk monitor weatherization activities of our service providers in real time. We believe incorporating this requirement will strengthen accountability within our network and improve our internal workflow as well. Federally recognized tribal organizations may be funded directly through DOE. Tribal organizations are allowed to apply for DOE WAP funding independently. This language was incorporated into our plan and includes that OHCS can act as a referral to accomplish this. This was a federal requirement. Weatherization Readiness Funds, or WRF, may exceed $20,000 when justified. Flexibility was included to cover change orders. Language was included into this section of our plan to allow for additional flexibility with WRF. We've learned that roof replacements are one of the main reasons for deferring a home from services in Oregon and have become our #1 use for this funding stream. Incorporating this flexibility will allow us to address change orders when they occasionally go over the original bid. We have also increased the timeline of a Weatherization Readiness Fund project from 120 days to 150 days to the completion. The average cost per unit has increased from $8,547 to $8,813. The average cost per unit, or ACPU, has increased, and this will help the program as we see rising material and labor expenses. We use this to calculate how many projects we can complete in a given period of performance. And in addition to these revisions, there were also standard updates that happened with the state plan, including adjustments to the overall allocations, staffing changes, and contact information for our delivery providers. Next slide, please. A large section of our state plan is dedicated to training and technical assistance, and these are the changes and updates that were made to this part. Training reimbursement must be reasonable, tied to approved labor rates, allowing us to include training for workforce and contractors. Workforce credentials aligned with current BPI 5-year and OTI certification schemes. 100% of completed weatherization projects must be inspected by certified quality control inspectors. Training paths and prerequisite certifications updated with training provider. Technical assistance was strengthened. Annual OHCS monitoring visits assess training needs. Identify deficiency, trigger targeted support from OHCS staff, or referral to an approved provider such as OTI.
I apologize.
The training and
for that brief interruption, Ms. Safford. The presentation blipped out for just a moment, so I wanted to just make sure you were aware. We were tracking for a while, and then the PowerPoint did something glitchy on you, but I think we're perhaps reset and maybe might be worth it.
Just got a thumbs up from the person running the slide, so we're working on it.
Okay.
Yeah, feel free to keep moving, Danielle. Thank you.
Okay, I can keep going. The training and technical assistance portion of the state plan has been updated to reflect updated training paths. 100% of completed weatherization projects must be inspected by a certified QCI. This is not an easy credential to earn, and it takes hours of time in the field as well as prerequisite certifications to get there. Our inspectors look at the whole house and how it works together as a system. We need to know construction practices, plumbing, electrical, insulation, heating systems, and we need to be able to identify hazards. OHCS contracts with OTI, the Oregon Training Institute, to meet our workforce needs. This section of our state plan was updated to include the most recent training paths, along with OTI's certification schemes to ensure that our network of field staff and contractors remain the most highly trained workforce in our industry. And that's what I have for you today.
Okay, with that, we can take any questions you guys might have about our plan.
Councilmember McNamara. Oh, you are on mute. There you go.
Not now. Thanks. Great programs. Wonderful to see what you're doing. Just curious, are you able to pair that with other incentives like Energy Trust or the utility programs and bring those in at the same time?
Yes, we can. There's a lot of other money out there that we're able to access and braid with our funds, and we do bring that in when we have to complete jobs generally. So,
All right. Okay, thanks.
Other questions? I thought I saw another hand up. Comments? Okay. Alrighty. That would bring us to our Community Services Block Grant 26-28 State Plan. Leanne Marks.
All right, thank you. I had to set that up real quick. Trying to share the screen. I'm hopeful that you can see the slide. Okay, good. Yay. All right. Well, good morning, Chair Farrell, Director Bell, and council members. For the record, my name is Leanne Marks. I serve as the CSBG Program Coordinator here at OHCS, and my pronouns are she, her. Today, I'm presenting the 26-28 CSBG State Plan application. And I'm going to walk through what CSBG is, our statutory goals, how OHCS developed the plan, and the key priorities we're advancing over the next 2 years. There it goes. So, CSBG is a federal block grant administered through HHS Office of Community Services. It was originally authorized under the CSBG Act of 1964, which formally created the community action agencies and established their mission to promote economic opportunity, strengthen communities, and help eliminate the causes and conditions of poverty. The program has evolved over time, but its core focus remains supporting locally driven, flexible strategies that meet unique needs of the low-income individuals and families. Here in Oregon, OHCS serves as the designated lead agency responsible for overseeing the distribution of CSBG resources. In alignment with federal requirements, OHCS passes through 90% of the funds to Oregon's 18 community action agencies, each of which tailors services to the specific challenges and priorities of the communities they serve. The remaining authorized 10% is retained by OHCS for administrative responsibilities, statewide coordination, training and technical assistance, and discretionary activities that strengthen the broader community action network. One of CSBG's greatest strengths is its flexibility. Because funds are limited to any single service area, CAAs can design comprehensive programs that address the interconnected factors contributing to poverty. This may include education and skill building, employment readiness, housing stability supports, improving access to basic needs, increasing income security, and other community identified strategies. Collectively, these efforts help Oregon families achieve stability, build resilience, and move toward long-term economic mobility. The CSBG Act establishes several national goals that guide our work, including self-sufficiency, improved living conditions, community engagement, service coordination, and strengthening the capacity of community action agencies. While these goals set broad direction at the federal level, CSBG is inherently community-driven. Local community needs assessments determine what services are prioritized, and CSBG funding helps CAAs respond to those needs, whether those are existing programs or new innovative approaches. The state plan is our formal application for the CSBG funding. It outlines how Oregon will meet the needs of low-income communities and comply with federal and administrative requirements. It serves as a forward-looking roadmap for the next 2 years, detailing our strategies, goals, and performance measures. Progress on these goals are later captured in the CSBG annual report, and I'm happy to provide the impact reports that we get from those from the annual report if requested. The plan also aligns with OHCS's broader statewide housing strategy, ensuring we strengthen long-term housing and economic stability, which aligns with the CSBG mission. To meet federal CSBG requirements, OHCS supports and monitors several key components. This includes annually assessing community action agencies' health through the organizational standards, providing targeted training technical assistance where needs are identified, and using continuous improvement frameworks such as ROMA and/or CAP Infinity. We also focus on building strong linkages in communication along with maintaining rigorous monitoring and fiscal controls. Together, these systems ensure CAAs have the capacity to deliver effective, impactful services across the state. OHCS convened a work group from November 2025 through April 2026, meeting monthly with CAPO, which is our state association, Community Action Agency executive directors, and Community Action Agencies program staff. These meetings created a structured space for discussion, analysis, and shared problem solving, allowing us to examine emerging needs, review federal expectations, and identify opportunities to strengthen statewide coordination. Through this period, OHCS facilitated multiple feedback cycles focused on refining goals, updating organizational standards, and enhancing technical assistance strategies. Work group members contributed recommendations informed by their on-the-ground experience, ensuring the plan addressed both operational challenges and long-term strategic needs. In addition to internal collaboration, the draft state plan was publicly released for broader review, followed by a formal public hearing and a written comment period. This step allows community partners, partner organizations, and stakeholders outside of the CAA network to offer feedback and suggestions. By combining ongoing dialogue with the transparent public engagement, this planning process ensures that the state plan is grounded in the realities CAAs face, aligned with the federal requirements, and reflective of Oregon's statewide priorities. The result is more of a responsive, informed, and cohesive roadmap for strengthening community action efforts over the next 2 years. As you can see, Goal 1 centers on strengthening economic security through workforce development, recognizing that stable employment is one of the most effective and sustainable pathways out of poverty. Our focus is expanding employment opportunities by partnering with community action agencies already engaged in Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA, activities, excuse me, identifying clear and equitable pathways to living wage jobs and refining reporting expectations so we can better understand statewide progress and needs. By coordinating efforts across agencies, we aim to help participants secure employment that not only provide income, but also supports long-term financial stability. A key element of this goal is strengthening collaboration between CAAs and local workforce development areas. Many of the CAAs already maintain strong partnerships with regional workforce boards, training providers, and economic development organizations, but we see opportunities to expand and deepen these connections. Enhanced coordination will improve access to job training, credentialing programs, apprenticeships, and supportive services that help individuals overcome barriers to employment. These efforts ensure that workforce services are more inclusive and responsive to the realities faced by job seekers. In addition, we are increasing the use of ALICE data in community needs assessments. ALICE data is a powerful tool for understanding the circumstances of working households that earn above the federal poverty level, yet still struggle to meet basic needs such as housing, transportation, childcare, and food. Incorporating ALICE metrics helps CAAs more accurately identify gaps in local labor markets, evaluate cost of living pressures, and design services that address the challenges faced by households who may not qualify for traditional assistant programs, but still experience significant financial hardship. For goal 2, we're focusing on strengthening the linkages between state and local plans to create a more unified and effective service system. We're assembling a cross-agency work group. We'll be in the process of that to improve coordination among partners, for example, ODHS, OHA, and HRSN, and to identify service gaps that could be addressed jointly. This collaborative approach helps ensure programs are better aligned and reduce fragmentation across agencies, supporting CAAs and aligning their local community plans with state priorities also promotes consistency and helps families experience more coordinated, accessible, and effective services across Oregon. For goal 3, we're centering on addressing resource scarcity and structural poverty. This came up in our work group, and this includes uplifting the value of the CSBG model, improving agency efficiency, and supporting stability pathways in communities. We're also exploring long-term strategies to address food security, particularly in areas where access challenges are more pronounced. In addition, we are examining how statewide partnerships and braided funding approaches can help mitigate persistent gaps in essential services. By strengthening both agency capacity and community resilience, this goal aims to create more durable, community-driven solutions that reduce the impact of poverty over time. And then for goal 4, we're focusing on youth and families. We want to reduce the barriers to family support, such as access to childcare or foster care resources. We're also exploring alignment with initiatives like the Diaper Grant and A Home for Every Child. These initiatives not only meet immediate needs, such as diaper access, but also connect families to broader supports like job training, early Head Start, and housing services. We are also considering how cross-agency coordination can streamline referrals and reduce the complexity families encounter when navigating multiple systems. By strengthening community action agency partnerships and building resilience in family support systems, this goal aims to ensure families experience timely, coordinated, and comprehensive assistance. Equity continues to be a core priority for OHCS, and HSD remains deeply committed to advancing this work across the division, our programs, and in compliance with the federal and state law. In July 2025, HHS issued a secretarial directive strongly urging CSBG grantees to review annual plans and subgrantee activities to ensure that there are no DEI-related activities that conflict with the federal law and policy. This CSBG state plan was developed in alignment with the new federal directive. Within those parameters, we still expect our subgrantees to collect, access, and outcome data and disaggregate the data by geography, gender, race, and other categories where we have historically seen disproportionately low rates of participation and success. Still identifying barriers to program access that may be impacting some parts of the eligible population more than others, and develop and implement strategies to remove those barriers, and ensure that information about available services is shared in ways that does not unintentionally exclude parts of the eligible population based on how, where, or by whom the information is delivered. Although the plan complies with the federal directive, we recognize that it creates additional administrative work on behalf of all of our subgrantees. We will continue to work closely with the Oregon DOJ to address compliance questions and support subgrantees as these requirements evolve. The CSBG state plans are submitted every 2 years. Our 26-28 plan is due on or before September 1st, 2026. The state plan draft was posted publicly on June 25th, followed by a hearing on July 14th, and a written comment period that ended at the end of the day on July 29th. These steps ensure transparency and allow stakeholders and community members to provide input before the final submission. And with that, this concludes my very, very brief summary of the CSBG state plan. And I thank you for your time and attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions about state plan, our goals, and the engagement process.
Thank you, Leanne. That felt very detailed. So if you're saying that that was brief, then I'm imagining it's a big, big thing. So with that, do we have questions or comments from council? Councilmember Rogers.
Thank you, Acting Chair Farrell, and thank you, Leanne, for the great presentation. And so is a copy of the plan on OCH's website?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'll take a
Forgot to
look.
mention that part, but yes,
Okay.
yes, it is.
Thank you.
Great question. Any other questions or comments for Leanne? All right, hearing none. Director Bell, is there anything further you'd like to address before we adjourn today?
I think maybe just one thing I'll emphasize just more broadly on state plans. I think this council, whether today is your first day or you've been on here for a while, I'm sure that most of you are generally familiar with all of the different federal plans that fly around and all of the different important but nonetheless hoops that we have to go through to make sure we get resources and keep resources here in Oregon. I think maybe just a couple things I will note. The federal landscape, certainly, at least in terms of grants, like a lot of the nuts and bolts have shifted. You know, what we know today and what the rules of the road are today could look very different in 6 months or a year. I think what I would also maybe just, and more importantly, emphasize is the sum of those state plans and the delivery thereof is very consistent with what the agency's responsibility is, which is as simplistic as it is ambitious, which is to make everyday life more affordable for people, to make sure that all people, regardless of what you look like or where you come from or what city you call home in Oregon, that you can be served and that you are appropriately being served, and that the resources are getting that are being allocated to us and then that make it to community, that they are delivering outcomes for folks through a locally driven context. So I would just say, with a lot of the kind of fanfare of stuff that gets a lot of attention, rightfully so, a lot of the nuts and bolts are still rather important, boring a little bit, but most importantly, the work is continuing to move forward. And so I think as you all wrestle with it, read the plan. Sharon, I know you're quite detailed, so if you say you're going to read a plan, I know you'll read it. Let us know as you have questions, but know that the bulk of the work, whether it's the CSBG state plan or the DOE, it is continuing to move forward quite unabated. That's it for me, Councilmember Farrell.
All right. I think that will adjourn our meeting today. I will see you all in September. Stay cool, stay safe if you are in a fire affected area. And I will look forward to seeing you soon. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.